It starts quietly, a low hum of discomfort you can't quite name. It's that feeling you get after agreeing to something you didn't really want to do, a strange internal friction. Or maybe it's a sudden hollowness in the middle of a conversation that, just yesterday, would have felt completely normal. Things that once mattered so much, promotions, social events, even your own long-held opinions, suddenly feel like props on a stage. And no, you're not breaking down. It's not a sign that you're ungrateful or losing your mind. It's more like your soul is developing an allergic reaction to the illusions you were once forced to swallow. This is an involuntary, often uncomfortable, process of letting go. A spiritual awakening isn't about adding new beliefs or collecting spiritual merit badges. It's a slow, relentless subtraction of everything that isn't real. It's the process of becoming more honest with yourself. And as you do, you'll find there are certain things you just can't do anymore. Not because you've decided to quit them with willpower, but because your entire being has started to reject them. Today, we're going to explore 7 of those things that spiritually awake people slowly and often involuntarily quit. First one is the desperate hunger for approval. There's a pattern so many of us are caught in, often without even realizing it's a cage. It's that silent, moment-to-moment calculation of, what will they think of me? You've organized your life, your choices, and even your personality around this desperate hunger for someone else's validation. You become a master shapeshifter, tweaking your truth depending on who's in the room. You say yes when your body is screaming no. You bite your tongue just to avoid conflict. You scan faces in a meeting, trying to read their reactions to your words, ready to pivot at a moment's notice. For many, this isn't just a preference. It's a deeply ingrained survival program. The fear of being judged, misunderstood, or rejected can feel like a genuine threat. The cost, of course, is your actual self. You become a collection of performances, an actor playing a role you think the audience wants, but the audience changes daily. The result is a profound sense of self-abandonment. Keeping the peace on the outside creates a war on the inside. Then the shift begins. As your spiritual awareness deepens, this hunger for approval doesn't just fade because you've willed it away. It starts to feel physically uncomfortable. Saying yes when you mean no feels like swallowing sand. Performing for others triggers a visceral feeling of inauthenticity, like wearing clothes that are too tight. Your system begins to reject what it once needed to survive. What replaces it is a slow, steady anchoring into your own inner authority. You stop looking for your reflection in other people's eyes and start building an inner sense of worth that doesn't need to be voted on. The main question of your life shifts from, what will they think, to a much quieter, more powerful question, what's actually true for me right now? You'll probably still feel the sting of disapproval or the pull of old habits for a while, but now you can see the machinery. You're no longer completely trapped inside it. You're slowly quitting the exhausting job of managing everyone else's perception of you. You learn a core truth. You cannot build an authentic life on borrowed approval. Second, the need to feel spiritually special. As you move through the early stages of awakening, a new and especially sneaky trap can pop up: the spiritual ego. It's just the regular ego wearing a new, enlightened-looking costume. You might have let go of needing a fancy car or a corner office, but you've just replaced it with a more subtle kind of status-seeking. You start collecting spiritual credentials. The behavior is subtle, but you know it when you see it. You might start dropping references to your meditation practice, the profound insights you had in yoga, or the esoteric books you're reading. You start comparing your level of consciousness to others, privately judging those who seem less awake. You might feel a little superior because you're no longer stuck in the matrix like everyone else. This is the ego's desperate attempt to stay important by creating a new identity, the spiritual one. It feels good, it feels evolved, but it's a trap. It creates a new kind of separation that makes you feel special, but also profoundly lonely. If you're not careful, A spiritual ego can even turn into a form of spiritual narcissism, where you see yourself as a wise teacher and everyone else as flawed students needing your wisdom. The way out of this pattern is through a deep lesson in humility. Genuine spiritual growth doesn't make you more special. It makes you more ordinary. It dissolves the need to stand out because you're no longer measuring yourself against anyone. You realize that obsessively pursuing ego death can be the ego's favorite new hobby. The spirit that tries to rise above the messiness of human experience is a false one. True awakening means recognizing that the need to be exceptional is a cage disguised as a promotion. As this need fades, you stop announcing your consciousness and just live it. You find a quiet joy in your own unremarkable humanity. You can connect with anyone, not because you're dumbing yourself down, but because you see your own journey in theirs. You remember what it was like to be asleep and feel real compassion for those still caught in the patterns you're just starting to escape. The desperate need to be spiritually more than dissolves into the simple, profound peace of just being. The truth is stark. The moment you need recognition for your awakening, you've put it on pause. Next one is the performance of constant positivity. In a lot of spiritual circles, there's an unspoken rule. Be positive, always. This is the performance of constant positivity, and it's one of the most common forms of spiritual bypassing. Spiritual bypassing is when you use spiritual ideas or practices to avoid or suppress uncomfortable emotions and unresolved issues. When you do this, you're essentially policing your own humanity. You force gratitude when what you feel is real grief. You smile through legitimate pain because you've been told that negativity lowers your vibration. A friend betrays you, and instead of feeling the sting of anger and hurt, you rush to say, "Everything happens for a reason." You lose your job, and instead of letting yourself feel the fear, you immediately start talking about how the universe has a better plan. While these phrases can hold some truth, they are often used to skip over the raw, messy, and necessary process of actually feeling. This isn't transcendence, it's emotional numbing. The cost of this performance is your own integration. Your shadow, the grief, the rage, the fear, doesn't vanish just because you ignore it. It gets stored in your body, living in the tightness of your jaw or the ache in your shoulders. By trying to be only light, you deny half of your own reality, creating a deep internal split. Forced positivity is exhausting and, ultimately, fake. The shift that happens in a real awakening is the embrace of the full spectrum of human experience. Spiritually mature people stop performing happiness and start honoring what's real. They understand that emotions like grief and anger aren't spiritual failures. They're vital information. Grief tells you what you loved. Anger shows you where your boundaries were crossed. Real wisdom comes from having the courage to feel everything, not from curating your emotional reality. You slowly quit the job of being the always positive one, and instead take on the much more profound work of being the fully human one. It becomes clear that any spirituality that avoids humanity is a spirituality that hasn't matured. Fourth, the iron grip on certainty. The human ego craves guarantees. It wants a roadmap for the future, a set of fixed beliefs that will never be challenged, and a feeling of control over a life that is fundamentally uncontrollable. Before awakening, many of us build our lives on this illusion of certainty. We make 5-year plans, cling to rigid ideologies, and believe that safety comes from knowing exactly what's next. This need for certainty can even follow us onto the spiritual path. We might look for a guru with all the answers or a belief system that explains everything. But certainty, while it feels like safety, is actually a prison. The moment you believe you have the truth locked down, you stop growing, you stop listening. Your spirit becomes brittle, unable to bend with the flow of life because you're too busy defending what you think you know. As a spiritual awakening deepens, this iron grip on certainty begins to loosen. And Honestly, it can be unsettling at first. Old beliefs may no longer fit, and former goals might not inspire you anymore. You could feel like you're floating in uncharted waters without a map. This isn't a sign you've lost your way. It's a sign you're finally finding it. In the space that certainty once filled, something new opens up. Mystery, wonder, and a deep trust in life itself. You move from the rigid stance of, "I have it all figured out," to the open-hearted posture of, "I am willing to keep discovering." You learn to find peace not in knowing the future, but in being fully present with the now. This shift changes your relationship with everything. You stop trying to control life, and instead, you learn to dance with it. You realize that uncertainty is where creativity and possibility are born. When nothing is fixed, everything is possible. You learn a simple but powerful lesson. Certainty is often the death of wisdom. Blame as an organizing principle. It's one of the most seductive stories the ego tells. I am suffering, and it is your fault. Blame is the organizing principle for a life lived as a victim. You build a story where your pain makes sense because someone else, a parent, an ex, a boss, is the villain. This story is tempting because it offers a sense of righteousness and lets you off the hook. You have a clear target for your anger, and you don't have to do the hard inner work of looking at your own role in things. But blame is a spiritual dead end. When you blame someone, you stay energetically tied to the very person or event that harmed you. You give them power over your emotional state. Holding on to blame is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick. It keeps you stuck in the past, endlessly replaying the story of your wound. The spiritual awakening process kicks off a slow but profound release from this victim-perpetrator story. This doesn't mean denying that harm happened or letting people off the hook for their actions. What it means is that you stop letting that harm define you. The focus shifts from what happened to you to what you're going to do with what happened. This is the move from blame to radical responsibility. It's recognizing that while you might not have controlled what happened in the past, you have complete control over how you respond to it today. You take your power back. Instead of focusing on others, you turn your attention inward to your own healing. You start to see that your peace is more important than being right. Forgiveness, in this context, isn't for the other person. It's an act of setting yourself free. You slowly quit the draining habit of pointing the finger because you realize that every ounce of energy you spend on blame is energy stolen from your own growth. The truth is, blame keeps you chained to the very thing you're blaming. Spiritual bypassing. This is one of the most well-disguised traps on the spiritual path because it uses the language of awakening to avoid the actual work of awakening. Spiritual bypassing is using spiritual concepts to sidestep real human difficulty. It's a subtle kind of avoidance that feels enlightened. Here are some classic examples. You use meditation to escape the anxiety of a difficult but necessary conversation. You dismiss deep feelings of hurt by saying, "It's just my ego talking." You avoid making a hard decision about your career by declaring you're trusting in divine timing, when really you're just paralyzed by fear. You might even explain away toxic behavior by saying you have bad karma to work through. In each case, a spiritual concept is used as a shield against the discomfort of real, direct experience. The danger here is that it creates a huge disconnect between your spiritual ideals and your actual life. You can talk eloquently about oneness, but find yourself unable to set healthy boundaries in your relationships. This leads to a weird feeling that something isn't right. True spiritual development doesn't let you float above life's complexities. It demands that you become more human, not less. The breakthrough happens when you realize spirituality isn't an escape hatch. It's a tool for digging deeper. Awakened people learn to use their practices not to numb themselves, but to find the strength to face discomfort head-on. They meditate to find the courage for the hard conversation. They practice self-compassion to hold their grief without judgment. They understand their unresolved wounds are part of the spiritual path, not an obstacle to it. They slowly quit using spirituality to avoid life, and instead use it to live more fully and honestly. You realize that any spirituality that avoids the messiness of being human isn't really spirituality at all. The identity of being awakened. This is the final and most subtle thing that spiritually awake people slowly quit. It's the last and most convincing costume the ego will wear. The identity of being awakened. After you've done the work, releasing the need for approval, seeing through the spiritual ego, embracing your emotions, letting go of certainty, dropping blame, and facing your own bypassing, a new identity can form. You become the conscious one. The one who gets it. In your mind, you've graduated from the ranks of the unconscious masses. This is the final trap, because it masquerades as the goal itself. You've simply replaced one form of specialness with another. Before, it might have been, I'm special because I'm successful. Now it's, I'm special because I'm awake. The underlying structure of separation and superiority is still there. This identity can make you feel isolated and subtly judgmental. You might find it hard to relate to normal people, viewing their concerns as trivial. This isn't freedom. It's just a more refined prison cell. The final dissolution is letting go of this identity. True awakening means outgrowing the need to even label yourself as awakened. You stop thinking about it, you stop talking about it, and you certainly stop announcing it. You just live it. You become, in a way, completely unremarkable, which is the most remarkable thing of all. Your spiritual maturity isn't seen in your esoteric knowledge, but in the simple, grounded way you move through the world. It's in how you listen without judgment, handle a setback with grace, and find beauty in the ordinary. This final release is a paradox. The moment you completely let go of the identity of being awakened, you truly are. You don't transcend your humanity. You inhabit it so completely that there's no separation left. You quit the final performance. And that's the final key that sets you free. Realizing the last illusion you have to let go of is the illusion that you're enlightened. As you've been listening, you might have felt a sense of recognition in one or more of these areas. This process is deeply personal and unfolds in its own time. If this resonated with you, take a moment to reflect. Share in the comments which of these 7 things you feel yourself slowly and perhaps reluctantly letting go of. Your story is a valuable part of this collective journey, and reading each other's experiences reminds us that we aren't alone in this quiet, profound shift. The journey of spiritual awakening is not a journey of addition, but one of subtraction. It's not about becoming something more. It's about unbecoming everything that is not you. The 7 things we've talked about: the hunger for approval, the need for spiritual specialness, the performance of positivity, the grip on certainty, the habit of blame, spiritual bypassing, and the final identity of being awakened, are not personal failings. They are layers of conditioning that are slowly and naturally shed as your true nature emerges. This process is rarely a dramatic explosion. More often, it's a quiet, internal shift. It's a slow, unfolding allergy to inauthenticity. It can feel lonely at times, as the world you once knew begins to feel foreign. But this feeling of disconnection is a sign that you are disconnecting from illusion to reconnect with something far more real: yourself. You can't unsee the truth once you've seen it. Trust the process. Trust the quiet discomfort. Trust the things that are falling away. They aren't leaving you empty. They are creating space. Space for your real self to breathe. Space for a life that is not performed, but lived. Space for an authenticity so deep and so quiet that it needs no announcement and seeks no approval. It is simply and profoundly who you are.